I'm Josh Schneiderweiler. Coming up on Football Today.
Vai Rodrygo, vai pra cima dele, Rodrygo. Ares prende na cobertura, Rodrygo, grande lance!
Here's Rodrygo, one last chance maybe. Benzema, Rodrygo! Hat-trick! What about that? 2 at the start, 1 at the end. 18 years of age, your second Champions League appearance, your first at the Bernabeu, and you're going home with a match ball. Rodrygo.
Last summer, Real Madrid signed Rodrygo for £40 million from Brazilian side Santos. Now, he is starting games for the club and already has a Champions League hat-trick. And this week, he is expected to make his senior debut for the Brazilian national team at the age of 18. Today, we chart his rise and look at the mysterious man at Real Madrid who lured him to the club.
From what we've seen so far, he looks really good. He's made an incredible impression over the last month or so at the Bernabeu.
Dermot Corrigan is a freelance writer and covers Spanish football.
You know, he arrived in the summer and people didn't know that much about him. They knew he was up and coming. They knew he was a starter. He was kind of being compared to Vinicius, who arrived last year and made a pretty good impression and has kind of had an up and down time. But people didn't know what to expect from Rodrygo. And then he came on against Osasuna, I think it was, and almost with his first touch made this beautiful control of the ball over the top, and with his second touch curled the ball into the bottom corner. People are like, wow, this guy, he looks really special.
A minute on the pitch, what control as that ball was floated over the top, and he kept his calm, and that's not someone who's lacking end product. 2-0 to Real Madrid, Rodrygo Silva with a dream start.
And he's gone on from there. He's slotted into the team. He scored another couple of goals recently, and they're really good, clever finishes. It's not like with Vinicius, you could see he's a guy who's lots of pace, he's very direct, he's lots of tricks and skill. But Rodrygo seems to have a real intelligence about him and a real calm in front of goal.
Is there anyone that he reminds you of?
He's already been compared to Raul, which, you know, around Madrid or around the Bernabeu is about as high a praise as you can possibly get, for a little bit for his personality, this almost his slight figure, the way he looks so serious on the pitch does kind of remind you of Raul, and he's made a similar impression to Raul when Raul broke into the scene 20 years ago. Obviously, there's a long way to go, and you know, players have made big impressions at the Bernabeu before and then maybe faded away. But at the moment, there's a lot of expectation around what he's going to do now.
Why is Zidane and the Brazilian national team giving him opportunities?
He's a very diligent guy. You can see by him that the small bits and pieces we get to see him in the mix zone or the interviews he does, mostly with Real Madrid TV. He's seems to be a very hardworking guy, very serious guy about his profession. He's eager to learn, and Zidane has kind of picked him up, whereas Zidane with some of the younger players can be a bit of tough love maybe with them. He's not... He expects a lot from his players. He wants them to prove to him that they're good enough to play in the team. He wants them to work hard, to have the right attitude, to not to mess around, to be serious about their profession. And Rodrygo seems to have that. You know, from very early in Brazil, he's been I guess groomed to make to the top. But there's been a lot of talk about him, maybe not quite as flashy, well, obviously not as flashy as Neymar, but not as Vinicius either, but somebody who people expected to do well. So in Brazil, they've been expecting him to come to the senior level, maybe not to make quite as big impression as he has at Madrid so far, but he would have been earmarked as a guy that they would have in their senior team into the future for sure.
Rodrygo said this week that he didn't want the pressure of replacing Cristiano Ronaldo. Is the expectation for him that high?
It's the way things work at Madrid that as soon as especially a young player comes along, especially a forward and scores a couple of goals, there are lots of expectations on him. He's been on the front of all of the sports papers fairly regularly over the last couple of weeks of AS and Marca, and they've run profiles, comparing his first 4 games with Madrid to Raul and to Emilio Butragueño also, when they were both players, similar type of players, slight guys but goal scorers who made big impressions in their first couple of games for Madrid and then went on to have stellar careers. It's amazing, and the Bernabeu maybe there's only a couple of stadiums in the world which are like this, but when a new player comes out and people really expect a lot from him, you can feel it in the stadium. You can hear the oohs and the ahs when a guy touches the ball, and you could see that Rodrygo has that. He has the instant control. He looks at home on that stage. He's able to compel the attention of the crowd.
Well, you've kind of alluded to the fact that he was kind of groomed for this in his native Brazil. His father was a professional footballer. Can you talk about his childhood back in Brazil?
His dad was a lower division player, a little bit like Neymar, where Neymar Sr. was also a player who gave up his career pretty soon. I think Rodrygo's dad was a little bit better maybe than Neymar, but similarly enough that they began to focus their whole lives. The whole life of the family was around this young star or this young player who was going to be a star. So everything was put in place. He had commercial contracts. He had a deal with Santos. He had European scouts. Like Madrid would have been in touch with him, and not just Madrid, from when he was 12, 13 years old. Everybody, everything around him would have been in place to prepare him to be a top player. His agent is one of the top agents in Brazil. He has PR people around him. He has people who look after everything for him. He's moved to when he's come here to Madrid. He's been looked after really well. He's moved into Julio Baptista's old house. He's an old Brazilian player who played for Madrid as well. There's an ex maybe or a Brazilian family in Madrid with players who've played for Madrid or who've played in Spain who stick together, and his dad has come into that and has settled into that, and he's getting the support from that because everybody recognises that this guy is a special talent, and they want to do the best for him and make sure he does well for Madrid.
Have you ever spoken to Rodrygo? Have you ever met him?
No, I haven't. Madrid are looking after him, I guess, which is fair enough. He's not spoken too much in public. He's done a little bit of Real Madrid TV interviews. I guess you saw him at the press conference in Brazil. I haven't seen him do a press conference here. He comes across anyway as a more thoughtful, serious kind of guy than Vinicius, who comes across who looks very good and very confident and a little bit more flashy maybe when in the little pieces of snatches we see them in public.
So how did he end up going to Real Madrid, and who else was interested in him?
The biggest European clubs are also, especially over the last decade or so, very active on the ground in Brazil, and especially Real Madrid and Barcelona. And Madrid seem to have got very quickly involved with Rodrygo and to have been monitoring him and in contact with him and his agent and his family over the years. The other clubs who I've heard were interested in him included Paris Saint-Germain, Barcelona, some of the English clubs as well. But it looks now that he was always set to go to Madrid because of how closely Madrid had worked with him up through the different ages or through the different ranks as he progressed.
And he was a Real Madrid fan when he was a kid too, right?
It often comes out that they are Madrid fans when they join Madrid, or they talk about always having been a Madrid fan. But I think in this case, he definitely was. There's a good story around that. Even before he joined the club, he knew the words to the Decima anthem that is played around the Bernabeu from when they won the long-awaited Decima in 2014. And he knew the words and was able to, when the transfer was confirmed, he did a recording on his phone of himself singing that to send to the Madrid hierarchy and to Florentino Perez.
In addition to Rodrygo, Real Madrid has Asensio, Vinicius, Bale, and Lucas Vazquez, who all play that position. Where is he on that pecking order?
The answer to that has changed so much over the last 6 weeks. When he arrived first, he was playing for Castilla, did really well for them, scored a couple of really nice goals for them. And Zidane obviously saw something in him that made him fast track him up. A lot of the players you've talked about there have had their different issues. Vinicius, his form this season hasn't been so good. The issues between Gareth Bale and the club are very much unresolved and have come back again recently. Lucas Vazquez has been injured. Marco Asensio is also out with a long-term injury. So James Rodriguez, he's similar to Bale, I think, in that kind of spot of a player who's physically and mentally maybe not quite at the level that Zidane is looking for the team. So as all these other pieces were falling away, Rodrygo was impressing Zidane in training. Zidane gave him the chance, came on for his debut, scored that goal. Then Zidane played him in Galatasaray, which was a huge game for Madrid. There was talk that that Zidane might be fired if Madrid had lost in Galatasaray in their Champions League game, the third game after they'd lost to PSG and then drawn with Bruges, puts Rodrygo into the team, and he plays really, really well, doesn't look out of place.
Rodrygo, very much the story, Ali. A hat-trick for the 18-year-old. Only two other 18-year-olds scored a hat-trick in the Champions League, Raul and Wayne Rooney.
Links really well with Benzema. Something you can, or maybe something that I would look out for, to see how a player is reacting on the pitch is how he and Benzema get together, whether they can read each other's runs, whether Rodrygo knows where to move, knows how to get the ball to his teammates, how to link with people. And Benzema is so intelligent that he both helps the players who are coming in, but you can kind of tell if somebody is on the same wavelength as Benzema, then he kind of knows what he's doing. He has a good football brain, and Rodrygo has shown that. And he's also scored a couple of goals which were really, really well taken, showing a striker's kind of instinct. So at the moment, I think if Madrid had the Clásico tomorrow, there's a good chance Rodrygo would start it.
I want to look at Rodrygo in terms of Real Madrid's overall transfer strategy. Why did Real Madrid move away from those Galactico signings and more towards those young, promising players?
It's definitely true that Florentino Perez, especially when he arrived in 2000, like a long time ago now, but he was kind of totally associated with buying Galacticos. That was his brand. There was Figo, Zidane, Ronaldo, Beckham, and not worrying so much about young players or homegrown players or anything like that you could buy the ready-made stars and put them into the team. Over time, that has changed for a couple of reasons. One is that the biggest stars are just so expensive now that it's very difficult for Madrid to compete with Paris Saint-Germain or Manchester City, or to pay the wages and the fee to have 5 or 6 of these Galacticos is very difficult. So what they're trying to do is to get the players in as young as possible and then build them up. It's not an overnight thing. You could look, it's been maybe a gradual move. A lot of the players on the current team, like Benzema, was pretty young when he was signed. Varane, Casemiro, even Marcelo. It's not always been a case of just paying over the top for the biggest stars, but even more over the last 3 or 4 years, Madrid have concentrated on buying younger and younger. Looking at people like Odegaard, Vinicius, and Rodrygo now, and paying quite a lot of money for talents who they think they can bring in at a young age and form and make into the biggest stars, rather than waiting for them to explode somewhere else and then signing them.
Was this a conscious decision from Real Madrid, or did this just come naturally?
Yeah, I think Florentino is, there is a character of him, or a cliched idea of him as just this rich guy who throws his money around all the time. And is a fan who is like playing fantasy football or playing Football Manager and just buying all the nice attackers that he wants. That's always been way too simplistic, and especially so over the last couple of years. He's surrounded himself bit by bit as well with people who are interested in youth football and who like the idea of moulding new talents and spotting new talents and bringing them to the club. So there has been a shift. They signed Dean and Hazard for 100 million this summer. They bought, Luka Jovic. They bought Mendy from France. They bought spent big money on players this summer anyway, or older players. But over time, it has become a bigger focus at Madrid to try to get these youngsters as young as possible and to make them themselves.
Juni Calafat is someone who isn't well known yet is a key figure in this change. Who is he?
Yeah, he's a super interesting character, and somebody who, as you say, doesn't have the highest profile for the amount of power that he has, maybe, or the amount of influence that he has at maybe the biggest club in the world. He's not so well known. His name is not doesn't come out so much in the papers, especially in the English speaking media. He was born in Spain but grew up in Brazil, in Sao Paulo, and was a professional indoor football player, which does exist, is on a lower level obviously to the football that we're talking about. But he was making his living as that, playing in Madrid, and became friendly with the other Brazilians who were in Madrid around the same time. You're talking about people like Roberto Carlos, Julio Baptista that I talked about, Ronaldo Nazario. Was friends with them, socialized with them. Their families were friends. Then after he retired, talking about a decade or so ago, he used to work on Spanish TV. He was an analyst on one of the international programs about international football that were here on Spain. So he would have been not hugely well known, but more as an analyst, journalist type person. In 2014, he went into Madrid a little bit because he knew he had links with the club from the players that he knew. He joined Madrid as a South American scout, I think maybe to look at that summer's Copa America, if I'm not wrong. And then bit by bit, he really impressed the people at the club at different levels of the club. He's obviously a good networker. He's obviously a very intelligent guy, and it fit with the idea that they were looking to capture more young talent, especially with a focus on South America. And he was somebody who had the right connections, had the right knowledge of the game as well, and was able to impress all the way up to Florentino Perez. He's close to Florentino's circle and Florentino's family as well, and has become over the last 5 or 6 years, a huge figure at the Bernabeu.
And have you met him?
No, I don't know if he's ever done an interview. He doesn't. A lot of different people at the club will come out and talk on the radio, or will be at events and talk to the journalists, and you get a little bit of access. But he, at Vinicius's unveiling, he's there, but he's there with the VIPs. He's not mingling with the journalists, or not with us guys anyway. So I've never come across him.
Which players has he been given credit for signing at the club?
When you read about the people who he is, as you say, given credit for signing, it's Casemiro is probably the biggest one who has broken into the team, but there's also people like Lucas Silva who had injury problems but didn't develop the way he was supposed to. Juni Calafat was supposed to be big in the signing of Martin Odegaard for Madrid. Everybody knew before Madrid signed Martin Odegaard, everybody knew that there was this amazing kid in Norway. You didn't have to be have spectacular contacts or spectacular judgment on the game to know that Odegaard looked like a special talent at that stage. And then it was about convincing him to move to Madrid instead of Liverpool or Bayern Munich or Ajax or the other clubs who were supposed to be interested in him. So I wouldn't say that Calafat has. It's been proven that he's found these bunch of amazing stars or amazing unknown talent who have become stars at Madrid. But bit by bit, he's worked his way up into a position where he's central to the signing of people like Rodrygo and like Vinicius and Militao this summer for a lot of money.
He seems like more of the person that builds relationships with the prospective players and their agents than actually discovers them.
Yeah, I think that as well. My impression will be similar, that he's very good at the networking end of the job, which is very important. There is a lot involved in getting the kid and his family and his agent to sign with your club opposed to other clubs, and that is something that Juni Calafat seems to be very good at, or to have proven himself as somebody who can get deals done.
We've referenced how quickly he's risen through the ranks at the club, but just how powerful is he?
Again, at Madrid, Florentino Perez is very powerful. He's the club president and he's in charge there. Then you have Jose Angel Sanchez, who's the director general at Madrid, who's been a long-time right-hand man of Florentino Perez, and he's maybe more involved in the big signings and getting the deals done, in dealing with agents, dealing with other clubs. After that, maybe Juni Calafat could be the next most important person at the club. It's difficult to know because there's so much talk about what happens. There's so many reports that you read. You talk to people and you hear stories and people tell you things. But the evidence is there. What we can see is that the club have made a lot of expensive bets on young Brazilian talent over the last 2 years or so. And Juni Calafat has been involved in that for sure.
Are the fans happy with this kind of shift in transfer policy?
If you ask the fans, would they prefer to have signed Rodrygo or Vinicius or Kylian Mbappe, for instance, they would say Kylian Mbappe. That the fans, they like the idea of signing these young players. Young players coming through is exciting and it's great. But what they really want is somebody who can make a big difference in the team. When Vinicius is going well, everybody loves him, and people are going, "Oh, how great Florentino was for signing him." Vinicius is not playing so well. People are going like, "Why do we spend around 50 million on this guy? He's unproven. How can you justify spending so much money on somebody who's so young?" It depends. The jury is still out very much on the wisdom of those signings.
In addition to Rodrygo, you have Marco Asensio, Vinicius, Mendy, and Militao but is he the best young prospect that Madrid have?
But there's two ways to answer that. I'd say over the last month or so, Rodrygo, he does look amazing. You know, you have to take a little bit of a step back and realise that not to make too many snap judgments and to say, you know, he is going to be the new Raul or the new Emilio Butragueño or whoever. But the way that he has settled into the team, the composure that he's shown, the intelligence that he's shown, and the kind of level-headedness. He scored that hat-trick in the home game against Galatasaray, you know, and it just seemed to come so naturally to him. It wasn't a case of him getting totally carried away. Even the way that he reacted on the pitch, the way he kept playing, the assist that he gave to Benzema for Benzema's goal on that night as well. He seemed to be able to deal with all the expectation and the situation that he had put himself into, and it didn't seem to fluster him. So it looks really promising. We'll have to see.
How long do you see them continuing on with this strategy? What are the odds of them doing an about face in 1 year?
Yeah, anything is possible at Madrid, I guess. You know, there's no point in Madrid going out next summer and signing 3 more teenagers who play up front, because you know what's going to happen to them. Even if you were around the next Brazilian who's coming through, if you were his advisors, you might be saying, well, you know, the way is blocked a little bit there, so we won't go to Madrid because, you know, all these players are going to keep him out of the team and not give him a chance to play. There's no sign of Florentino stepping away, and it has been, as I say, it's not quite a flash in the pan. You know, if you go back to Varane or to even Marcelo, when Marcelo arrived at Madrid, he was only 18, I think, maybe 19. So they have. It's not totally new to be signing teenage talent from overseas and trying to fit it into the team and hoping that some of the bets come through. Over the last 2 years or so, there has been an unsustainable number of youngsters who are coming in, so that has to slow down a little bit. But from what we can see from the outside, the policy is set to continue, maybe not quite as over the top, but it will continue in similar enough form for the next couple of years at least, I would say.
You can read all of Dermot Corrigan's coverage of Spanish football on The Independent and Unibet. The show was produced by John McKenzie. I'm Josh Schneider-Weiler, and this was Football Today. And if you enjoyed the show, please rate and review us on iTunes and share it with a friend. See you next time.